Little girl refuses to jump rope. Teacher sees her belly and calls 911 in shock. Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. In a neighborhood of perfectly manicured lawns and elegant homes, the Morgan house stood like a postcard of the American dream. Grand white columns, freshly painted shutters, and a lawn so perfect, it looked almost unreal. But inside those walls lived 6-year-old Lily Morgan, a little girl with honey-colored hair, curious eyes, and a secret friend only she could hear. Lily's bedroom was a child's paradise. Plush carpets in soft pink, shelves lined with untouched dolls, and a canopy bed fit for a princess. Everything a little girl could dream of, except for the one thing she needed most. That morning, sunlight streamed through lace curtains as Lily sat cross-legged on her bedroom floor, carefully, adding the final touches to a rainbow drawing. She'd been working on it all morning, making sure each color blended perfectly into the next. "Do you think Mommy will like it, Whisper?" she asked quietly, tilting her head as if listening to a response only she could hear. After a moment, she nodded, solemnly. "You're right, but I'm going to try anyway." Clutching her masterpiece, Lily padded down the hallway in her fuzzy socks, past the immaculate living room where no one ever seemed to sit, toward the sound of rapid typing. She paused at the doorway of her mother's home office, watching Mrs. Morgan stare intensely at her computer screen, fingers dancing across the keyboard. "Mommy?" Lily's voice was barely above a whisper. Mrs. Morgan held up one finger without looking away from the screen. "Just a minute, Lily." Lily waited, counting silently to 60 like she'd been taught in school. When she reached 93, her mother finally glanced up. "What is it, sweetie?" "Mommy's in the middle of something important." "I made this for you," Lily said, holding out her rainbow drawing with both hands. Her mother's eyes flicked to the paper, then back to the screen as a notification popped up. "That's lovely, honey. Why don't you put it on the fridge?" Lily nodded and retreated, her mother already back to her important work. In the kitchen, she carefully attached her drawing to the refrigerator with a magnet, right next to last week's untouched artwork and the calendar marking. Her father's business trips. More days marked away than home. As evening fell, Lily set the dining table herself, placing an extra plate beside her own. "Who's that for?" asked Ms. Peterson, her babysitter, without looking up from her phone. "For Whisper," Lily replied simply. The babysitter sighed, sliding a tablet across the table to Lily. "Here, watch your shows while I fix dinner." Later that night, as Lily lay in her perfect bed in her perfect room in their perfect house, she placed her small hands over her stomach and whispered into the darkness, "Only you understand what I feel." Inside, Whisper. Only you really listen. And somewhere deep within her, something seemed to shift in response. The morning bell echoed through the hallways of Oak Ridge Elementary as children rushed to their classrooms, backpacks bouncing and voices chattering excitedly about weekend adventures. Miss Sarah Anderson stood at her classroom door, greeting each student with a warm smile. "Good morning, Lily," she said as the quiet girl with honey-colored hair approached, clutching her purple backpack straps tightly. "Morning, Miss Anderson," Lily replied softly, her eyes downcast. Sarah had been teaching first grade for 7 years, and something about Lily Morgan had caught her attention from the first day of school. While other children shared stories and laughed together, Lily observed from the sidelines, a thoughtful sentinel rather than a participant. During circle time, Sarah noticed Lily sitting slightly apart from the group, one hand resting protectively over her stomach. When Jason excitedly shared about his weekend fishing trip with his dad, Sarah caught a shadow passing over Lily's face. "Lily, would you like to share anything about your weekend?" Sarah asked. Gently, the little girl shook her head. "No thank you, Miss Anderson." As the morning progressed, Sarah kept a watchful eye on Lily. During arts and crafts, while other children created joyful scenes of family outings and playful pets, Lily meticulously drew a garden with vibrant flowers surrounding. A strange house with perfectly round windows. In the corner of her paper, a small stick figure stood alone. That's a beautiful garden, Sarah commented, kneeling beside Lily's desk. Who's that in the picture? That's me, Lily whispered. And Whisper lives here too, but you can't see him. Whisper? Sarah asked. Lily's eyes widened slightly as if she'd said too much. He's my friend, but it's a secret. At lunchtime, Sarah noticed that Lily barely touched her food, pushing it around her plate instead. When asked if she felt well, Lily simply nodded, but the slight crease between her eyebrows told a different story. As the children filed out for physical education, Sarah shared her concerns with the school nurse. She's been holding her stomach a lot lately, Sarah explained, and she seems more withdrawn than usual. On the playground, Coach Miller had the children jumping rope, in pairs. Sarah watched from the sidelines as Lily stood apart, observing the other children with longing eyes. Lily, would you like to jump with Emma? Coach Miller called. The little girl shook her head, both hands now pressed against her abdomen. Concerned, Sarah approached her. Lily, are you feeling okay? Lily's face had gone pale, her forehead beaded with sweat despite the cool autumn air. When Sarah reached for her hand, the girl took a small step backward. It's moving again, Lily whispered, her voice trembling. What's moving, sweetie? Sarah asked, kneeling to meet Lily's eyes. Instead of answering, Lily's lower lip quivered. A tear slipped down her cheek as she hunched forward slightly, clearly in discomfort. Without hesitation, Sarah made a decision that would change both their lives forever. She pulled out her phone and dialed 911, keeping her voice calm as she spoke to the dispatcher while maintaining eye contact with the frightened child. It's going to be okay, Lily, she promised, though uncertainty gnawed at her heart. We're going to figure this out together. The emergency room at Mercy Children's Hospital bustled with activity. Nurses in colorful scrubs moved efficiently between curtained areas, while the occasional announcement echoed over the intercom system. In one of the examination rooms, Lily sat on the edge of a bed that seemed too large for her small frame, her legs dangling without reaching the floor. Sarah had ridden in the ambulance with her, holding the little girl's hand the entire way. Now she sat beside the bed, trying to mask her concern with reassuring smiles. The doctor will be here soon, Sarah said, adjusting the teddy bear a nurse had given Lily. They're going to help figure out why your tummy hurts. Lily nodded, solemnly, her eyes taking in every detail of the room. The beeping machines, the chart on the wall, the sanitizer dispenser by the door. She hadn't cried since that single tear on the playground, maintaining a composure that seemed far beyond her 6 years. Dr. Patel, a kind-faced woman with gentle hands, arrived with a tablet in hand. Hello there, Lily, I'm Dr. Patel. Can you tell me where it hurts? Lily pointed to her lower abdomen but didn't speak. Has this happened before? The doctor asked, her voice warm and unthreatening. Lily glanced at Sarah, then back to the doctor, giving a small nod. Can you tell me when it started? A long time ago, Lily whispered. Whisper tells me it's okay. Dr. Patel raised an eyebrow but didn't dismiss the comment. And who is Whisper? My friend. He lives inside. Lily placed her hand over her stomach again. He keeps me company when no one else is there. The doctor nodded, making notes. I'd like to run some tests, Lily. Nothing scary, I promise. We just want to see what might be causing the discomfort. What followed was a whirlwind of activity. Blood tests, an ultrasound where cool gel was spread across Lily's stomach, and x-rays that required her to lie very still. Through it all, Sarah remained by her side, even though she knew she should call the school to arrange for a substitute teacher. Has anyone contacted Lily's parents? Dr. Patel asked quietly while Lily was being distracted by a child life specialist. The school office was trying, Sarah replied. Her father is apparently out of town on business and her mother, well, they were having trouble reaching her. As if summoned by their conversation, a harried-looking woman in an expensive suit appeared at the doorway, phone still in hand. I came as soon as I got the messages, Mrs. Morgan said, her eyes darting between the doctor, Sarah, and Lily. What's going on? Is this really necessary? She was fine this morning. Dr. Patel stepped outside with Mrs. Morgan to explain the situation, leaving Sarah with Lily, who had tensed at her mother's arrival. It's okay, Sarah assured her. The doctors just want to help you feel better. Whisper says nobody will believe me, Lily confided in a voice so low Sarah had to lean closer to hear. He says they never do. Before Sarah could respond, Dr. Patel returned with Mrs. Morgan, whose expression had shifted from annoyance to confused concern. We've completed the initial tests, Dr. Patel explained. There's definitely some inflammation, but it's not consistent with appendicitis or any typical infection. We're going to need to keep her for observation and run more tests. This is probably just an emotional phase, Mrs. Morgan said, checking her watch. Lily has always been sensitive, perhaps too imaginative for her own good. Sarah felt a surge of protectiveness. With all due respect, Mrs. Morgan, Lily was in physical pain at school. This isn't imagination. As the adults discussed her future, Lily closed her eyes and pressed her hand against her stomach, her lips moving in silent conversation with the only one she believed truly understood her. The pediatric ward of Mercy Children's Hospital was designed to feel less intimidating than the rest of the sterile facility. Walls, painted with woodland creatures and stars, colorful privacy curtains, and a small play area at the end of the hall, all attempted to soften the clinical environment. But nothing could truly mask the unmistakable hospital scent, a mixture of antiseptic and institutional cleanliness. Lily had been admitted for observation. Her small form nearly disappeared in the hospital bed. Her honey-colored hair splayed across the white pillow as she slept, finally exhausted from the day's events. Sarah sat in the visitor's chair beside the bed, grading papers by the dim light of the bedside lamp. She had called the school principal, who had been understanding and arranged for a substitute teacher for the next day. Something about Lily's situation tugged at Sarah's heart, making it impossible for her to leave the child alone. Mrs. Morgan had stayed for an hour, sitting stiffly in the corner, alternating between answering emails on her phone and making business calls in hushed tones outside the room. When she finally left, she'd squeezed Lily's hand awkwardly. I have an important conference call with Tokyo tonight, she'd explained to Sarah, not quite meeting her eyes. Her father is trying to get a flight back, but he's in Seattle closing a deal. Now, in the quietness of the night shift, Sarah watched Lily stir in her sleep, her small brow furrowing as if troubled by dreams. Whisper, the child murmured, her hands moving to her stomach even in sleep. I'll keep your secret. Sarah leaned forward, gently brushing a strand of hair from Lily's forehead. What secrets was this little girl carrying? What caused her such distress that her body was physically reacting? A soft knock at the door drew Sarah's attention. Night nurse Valerie entered with a clipboard. How's our patient doing? She whispered. Sleeping now, Sarah replied. Has there been any word from the doctors about her test results? Valerie shook her head. Dr. Patel ordered some additional blood work. They're still trying to determine what's causing the inflammation. She hesitated, then added, There was a phone call at the nurse's station earlier. Someone asking about Lily's condition. Her parents. No, that's what was odd. A man who said he was a family friend. When we explained we could only give information to immediate family, he seemed insistent. Said something about being worried about what might be happening to her. A chill ran down Sarah's spine. Did he leave a name? Let me check. Valerie flipped through her notes. Yes, here it is. Nathan Edwards. Said he used to work for the family. Sarah frowned, the name triggering no recognition. Did you tell Mrs. Morgan? I left a message, but she hasn't called back. Valerie checked Lily's vital signs on the monitor. The odd thing was how he described himself. Said he was someone who knows what Lily carries inside her. Before Sarah could respond, Lily's eyes fluttered open, startlingly alert for someone who had been deep in sleep seconds before. Mr. N called, didn't he? She asked, her voice small but clear. Both women stared at the child in surprise. Lily, do you know someone named Nathan? Sarah asked gently. The little girl's eyes widened, and she pulled the blanket up to her chin. Whisper doesn't like when I talk about him. Who is Mr. N, sweetheart? Sarah pressed, keeping her voice calm despite the unease settling in her stomach. Instead of answering, Lily reached for the small backpack Sarah had brought from school. She pulled out her drawing notebook and a box of crayons. I can show you, she whispered, flipping to a blank page. With determined concentration, she began to draw, her small hand moving with purpose across the paper. Sarah and Valerie exchanged concerned glances as a figure took shape, a tall, shadowy silhouette standing beside what appeared to be a garden. At the bottom of the page, Lily carefully printed 3 words: the Flower Man. He makes flowers that can hear secrets, Lily explained, her voice barely audible. He says they're special. Magic. When did you meet this man, Lily? Sarah asked, trying to keep her growing concern from showing in her voice. Lily looked up, her eyes far older than her years. A long time ago, but Whisper says he's coming back. He always comes back when I'm alone. Morning arrived at Mercy Children's Hospital with the shift change bustle. Nurses exchanging notes, breakfast carts rattling down. Hallways and the gradual brightening of rooms as curtains were drawn back to welcome the day. Sarah had dozed off in the visitor's chair, waking with a stiff neck and the disoriented feeling of sleeping in an unfamiliar place. Lily was already awake, sitting cross-legged on her bed with her drawing pad open before her. Her face wore an expression of intense concentration as her crayon moved across the page in deliberate strokes. Good morning, Lily, Sarah said, stretching discreetly. Did you sleep okay? The little girl nodded without looking up from her artwork. Whisper kept the bad dreams. Way. Sarah moved to sit on the edge of the bed, curious about what had captured Lily's attention so completely. The drawing taking shape was more detailed than most 6-year-olds could manage. A garden filled with flowers of every color, each one drawn with careful precision. In the center stood a small house with perfectly round windows like something from a fairy tale. On the path leading to the house was a tiny figure that Sarah recognized as Lily's representation of herself. This is beautiful, Sarah commented. Is this a special place? Lily nodded, adding a red flower in the foreground. It's where Whisper was born. And where is this garden? At Grandpa's old house, the one in the woods. Lily selected a black crayon and began to add a tall, thin figure at the edge of the garden. Mr. N made it. He said the flowers can hear things that people say. They remember. Everything. The figure she drew had no detailed face, just 2 dots for eyes and a line for a mouth. Yet something about its stance, the way it loomed at the garden's edge, sent a shiver down Sarah's spine. Does Mr. N have a full name, Lily? Sarah asked carefully. The little girl's hand paused, hovering over the paper. Nathan, she whispered as if saying the name too loudly might summon him. But Whisper says I shouldn't talk about him. Before Sarah could ask another question, a nurse entered with Lily's breakfast tray. Good morning, sunshine. Dr. Patel will be by shortly to check on you. As Lily picked at her breakfast, Sarah flipped through the drawing pad, discovering page after page of similar scenes. The garden, the house with round windows, and always, somewhere in the picture, the shadowy figure of Mr. N. Some drawings showed flowers with faces hidden among their petals. Others depicted Lily and Whisper, represented as a small blue light, sitting among the blooms. On one page, Lily had written in her careful first-grade handwriting, He said the flowers are magic. He said they can hear when I'm sad. Dr. Patel arrived with her tablet and a kind smile. How are we feeling today, Lily? The examination was gentle and thorough. Dr. Patel pressed lightly on different areas of Lily's abdomen, noting when the child winced. The tests show inflammation, but we're still trying to determine the cause, she explained to Sarah afterward, speaking quietly by the door. It's not appendicitis or any typical infection. We'd like to consult with a pediatric gastroenterologist, but also, she hesitated, glancing at Lily, who was back to drawing. Given what the school reported and her references to this Whisper and Mr. N, we think it would be beneficial to Have a child psychologist evaluate her. You think this could be psychosomatic? Sarah asked. It's possible. Children's bodies often manifest emotional distress in physical ways, but we need to rule out all medical causes first. After Dr. Patel left, a social worker named Ms. Chen arrived to speak with Lily. Sarah was asked to step outside, but through the window in the door she could see Lily showing her drawings to Ms. Chen, pointing to elements in each picture with a serious expression. Later, when Sarah returned to the room, she found Lily adding a new detail to her garden drawing. A small door hidden beneath the tallest flowers. "What's that, Lily?" she asked. The little girl looked up, her eyes wide and solemn. "That's where Mr. N keeps the secrets. He said they're safe there, where nobody can find them." She lowered her voice to a whisper. "But he told me one day he'd come back to get them. And me." The afternoon stretched long in Lily's hospital room. Social worker Ms. Chen had left after her session, promising to return the next day. Lily's mother had called, not visited, to say she was in an all-day meeting but would try to come by in the evening. There was still no word from Lily's father beyond a text message saying his flight had been delayed. Sarah had stepped out to get lunch from the hospital cafeteria, bringing back an extra chocolate pudding cup that had coaxed the first genuine smile she'd seen from Lily. "Miss Anderson," Lily asked carefully, scraping the last bit of pudding from the plastic cup, "do you have to go back to school soon?" The question caught Sarah off guard. "I have a substitute teacher covering my class for now." "Why do you ask?" Lily set the empty cup on her tray, her eyes downcast. "I don't want to be alone when he comes." "When who comes, Lily?" "Mr. N." She said it so matter-of-factly that a chill ran through Sarah. "Whisper says he's getting closer." Sarah moved to sit on the edge of the bed, gently taking Lily's small hand in hers. "Lily, I promise you're safe here. The hospital has security and there are doctors and nurses around all the time." The little girl didn't look convinced. She reached for her drawing pad again, flipping to a new page. "Whisper wants me to show you something else." As Lily began to draw, Sarah noticed how her technique changed, the lines becoming more jagged, the pressure on the crayon heavier. The image that emerged was the same garden but at night, with dark blues and purples dominating the page. The house with round windows glowed yellow from within, and the shadowy figure of Mr. N stood much closer to it than in previous drawings. "He's coming to take me back to the garden," Lily whispered. "He says the flowers miss me." A soft knock at the door interrupted them. A nurse Sarah hadn't seen before poked her head in. "There's someone here to see Lily. Says he's a family friend." Sarah felt her body tense. "Did he give a name?" "Nathan Edwards says he used work for the Morgan family." Before Sarah could respond, Lily's crayon snapped in her grip, the broken piece falling to the blanket. Her face had gone pale. I think we should check with Mrs. Morgan first," Sarah said quickly, moving to stand between the door and Lily's bed. "Has he been cleared by security?" "He has ID and he's in the visitor system," the nurse replied, "but I can double-check if you'd prefer." "Yes, please," Sarah said firmly. "And could you call Mrs. Morgan?" The nurse nodded and disappeared. Sarah turned back to find Lily huddled against her pillows, knees drawn up to her chest. "It's okay, Lily," she assured her. "No one is going to see you without permission." But minutes later, the door swung open again. This time, a man entered carrying a small bouquet of bright yellow daffodils. He was tall and thin, perhaps in his early 40s, with neatly combed brown hair and wire-rimmed glasses. He wore khaki pants and a button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms tanned from outdoor work. "Lily Flower," he exclaimed, his voice warm and immediately friendly. "I've been so worried about you." Sarah stepped forward. "Excuse me, but we're waiting for confirmation." "Oh, I'm sorry," he said, extending his hand. "Nathan Edwards. I used to be the gardener for the Morgan estate. Mrs. Morgan just gave permission for me to visit. You can check with the front desk if you need to." He smiled, revealing slightly crooked front teeth. "And you must be Miss Anderson, Lily's teacher, right? Mrs. Morgan mentioned you've been kind enough to stay with Lily." His manner was so open and his smile so genuine that Sarah felt her suspicions wavering. Still, she noticed that Lily hadn't said a word, her eyes fixed on the flowers in Nathan's hand. "I brought your favorites," Nathan said, turning to Lily and placing the daffodils on her bedside table. "Remember how we used to plant these all around the garden path?" Lily nodded almost imperceptibly, still clutching her blanket. "The garden misses you," Nathan continued, pulling up a chair. "All the flowers are asking about you, especially the red ones by the round window house." Sarah watched as Lily's eyes widened, darting between Nathan and her drawing pad. The coincidence was unsettling. He had mentioned the exact details from Lily's drawings. "I thought maybe we could draw together, like old times," Nathan suggested, producing a set of colored pencils from his pocket. "Would you like that, Lily Flower?" Lily remained silent, but her gaze never left Nathan, as though she couldn't decide whether to be afraid or fascinated by his presence. The atmosphere in Lily's hospital room had shifted with Nathan's arrival. He sat sketching beside Lily's bed, telling stories about different flowers and their meanings, his voice animated and engaging. Sarah remained by the window, watching carefully, noting how Lily had gradually uncurled from her protective position, but still hadn't spoken directly to the former gardener. "And do you remember the forget-me-nots we planted by the pond?" Nathan asked, his pencil creating delicate blue flowers on the page. "They're still there, spreading every year. Nature remembers, even when people forget." Something about the way he emphasized those last words made Sarah uneasy. A knock at the door announced the arrival of Dr. Patel and Mrs. Morgan, who had finally made it to the hospital. Mrs. Morgan looked harried, her designer suit slightly rumpled after a long day of meetings. "Nathan," she said, surprise evident in her voice, "I didn't expect you to come so quickly." Nathan stood, offering a respectful nod. "When the hospital called saying Lily was ill, I had to see for myself that she was okay. We were such good friends when I worked for your family." Dr. Patel introduced herself, then suggested they step outside to discuss Lily's condition. As the adults filed into the hallway, Sarah hesitated, glancing back at Lily. "I'll stay with her," she offered, noticing how the little girl's shoulders had tensed again. Once alone with Lily, Sarah moved closer to the bed. "You knew Mr. Edwards from before?" Lily nodded slowly, reaching for her drawing pad. She flipped through to find the garden with the round-windowed house, then pointed to the shadowy figure. "Mr. N," she whispered. "And he was your family's gardener?" Sarah prompted gently. "He made the special garden," Lily confirmed, her voice barely audible, "the one where flowers can hear." Before Sarah could ask more, the door opened and Ms. Chen, the social worker, entered with a woman Sarah didn't recognize. "Hello again, Lily," Ms. Chen said warmly. "This is Mrs. Winters from Family Services. She's going to be visiting your home today. Just to make sure everything is okay there." Mrs. Winters smiled kindly at Lily. "We just want to understand why your tummy has been hurting, sweetheart." Outside in the hallway, voices were rising. Through the partially open door, Sarah could hear Mrs. Morgan's indignant tone. "A home inspection? This is ridiculous. There is absolutely nothing wrong with our home." "It's standard procedure in cases like this," came Ms. Chen's calm reply. "When a child presents with unexplained physical symptoms, and there are concerns about—" "Concerns? What concerns?" "Lily has always been an imaginative child. This whole situation is being blown completely out of proportion." Inside the room, Lily had begun drawing again, her crayon moving furiously across the page. Sarah glanced over to see her creating a new image, the Morgan house, drawn in stark contrast to the magical garden of her other pictures. The house was perfectly proportioned, almost architectural in its precision but completely devoid of color or life. "Is that your home, Lily?" Mrs. Winters asked, sitting beside the bed. Lily nodded, adding a small figure in an upstairs window. Herself, Sarah realized, looking out at a world she couldn't reach. "Can you tell me about your home?" Mrs. Winters continued. "What's your favorite room?" "My room is pink," Lily replied mechanically. "It has a canopy bed and a bookshelf and a toy chest." "That sounds lovely. Do you play with your toys a lot?" Lily shook her head. "They're for looking, not touching. So they stay nice." Mrs. Winters exchanged a glance with Sarah. "And who do you play with at home?" "Whisper," Lily said simply. "He's the only one who has time." Later that afternoon, after Mrs. Winters had left for the Morgan residence and Mrs. Morgan had returned to work, just for a few hours, these contracts won't review themselves, Nathan reappeared at Lily's door with a small potted plant. "A peace lily," he explained to Sarah. "They purify the air. I thought it might help Lily feel better." He placed it on the windowsill, adjusting it to catch the light. "Just right." Then he turned to Lily with a conspiratorial smile. "I've been taking care of our special garden, Lily Flower. The house with the round windows is still there, waiting. And the flowers?" He lowered his voice to a whisper. "They've been keeping all your secrets safe, just like I promised." Sarah watched as Lily's hand moved instinctively to her stomach, her face a complex mixture of fear and longing. "The flowers remember everything," Nathan continued softly. "And soon, very soon, it might be time to visit them again." The next morning dawned gray and misty, rain pattering gently against the hospital windows. Sarah had gone home briefly to shower and change clothes, returning to find Lily awake early, staring at the peace lily on her windowsill. "It's talking to the other flowers," Lily whispered when Sarah entered, "telling them where I am." A chill ran through Sarah. Despite the warmth of the room, "Lily, plants can't really talk to each other." The little girl gave her a look far too knowing for her 6 years. "That's what grown-ups think, but Mr. N showed me how to listen." Dr. Patel arrived with good news. Some of Lily's inflammation markers had decreased overnight. "The pain medication seems to be helping," she explained, "but we still don't have a clear diagnosis." After the doctor left, Sarah noticed Lily had become unusually restless, fidgeting with her blanket and glancing repeatedly at the door. "Are you expecting someone?" Sarah asked. Lily nodded. "Whisper says someone important is coming today." As if on cue, the door opened to reveal Mrs. Winters from Family Services, accompanied by Ms. Chen. Their expressions were professionally neutral, but Sarah detected an undercurrent of concern. "Good morning, Lily," Mrs. Winters said warmly. "How are you feeling today?" "The medicine makes my tummy feel better," Lily replied. "But Whisper is still worried." Mrs. Winters nodded as if this were a perfectly normal statement. "I visited your house yesterday. You have a beautiful room." "Did you see the garden?" Lily asked suddenly, her eyes intensely focused. "I saw your backyard," Mrs. Winters replied carefully. "It has lovely landscaping." Lily shook her head emphatically. "Not that garden. The special one, with the house with round windows." Mrs. Winters exchanged a glance with Ms. Chen. "I didn't see a house like that. Where is this garden, Lily?" "At Grandpa's old house in the woods. That's where Mr. N made the listening flowers." Lily reached for her drawing pad, flipping to her detailed garden illustrations. "See? This is where Whisper was born." Sarah watched as the social worker examined the drawings with careful attention, asking gentle questions about each element. When Lily mentioned again that the flowers could hear secrets, Mrs. Winters' expression remained neutral, but her pen moved quickly across her notepad. Later, in the hallway outside Lily's room, Sarah overheard fragments of conversation between Mrs. Winters and Ms. Chen. Concerning level of fantasy elaboration, consistent narrative elements suggest, need to locate this property. Their discussion was interrupted by the arrival of a distinguished older man with silver hair and a cane, accompanied by a nurse. Sarah recognized him immediately from the family photo on Mrs. Morgan's desk, Lily's grandfather. "Where is my granddaughter?" he demanded, his voice carrying the slight quaver of age, but no less authoritative for it. When he entered Lily's room, The little girl's face lit up with the first genuine smile Sarah had seen since this ordeal began. "Grandpa," she called, arms outstretched. "There's my Lily Bell," he said warmly, making his way to her bedside with measured steps. He enveloped her in a gentle hug, then settled in the chair beside her, keeping hold of her small hand. "Now, what's all this about tummy troubles?" As Lily explained in her own way, Sarah observed the strong bond between them, how he listened intently to even her most fanciful descriptions, nodding seriously when she mentioned Whisper. "And Mr. N has been here," Lily added, her voice dropping. "He brought flowers, and said the garden is waiting." The change in the old man's demeanor was subtle but unmistakable, a tightening around the eyes, a slight stiffening of his shoulders. "Nathan Edwards has been here?" he asked, his tone carefully controlled. When Sarah confirmed this, something dark flickered across his weathered face. "Lily Bell," he said gently, "would you like to tell me about the special garden again? The one with the round-windowed house?" As Lily eagerly showed him her drawings, her grandfather's expression grew increasingly troubled. When she described how the flowers could hear secrets, he closed his eyes briefly, as if in pain. "I know that place," he said finally, looking up at Sarah with grave concern. "It's at my old country property, about an hour from here, the estate I lived in before downsizing to my current home." "The listening garden is real?" Sarah asked. Unable to mask her surprise, the old man nodded slowly. "Nathan was our groundskeeper there for several years. He created a special children's garden for Lily when she was very young, with a playhouse that had round windows." He gently touched one of Lily's drawings. "I had no idea he was still in contact with her." His gaze returned to his granddaughter, who was now happily adding details to her garden picture, seemingly comforted by his presence. "But what troubles me most," he added quietly, so only Sarah could hear, "is that the property has been abandoned for nearly 4 years. No one should be tending any gardens there now." The hospital corridor buzzed with urgent conversations. Lily's grandfather, Mr. Morgan Sr., had requested a meeting with everyone involved in his granddaughter's care. Dr. Patel, Ms. Chen, Mrs. Winters, and Sarah gathered in a small conference room while a nurse stayed with Lily. "I should have been informed immediately," Mrs. Morgan said sharply as she entered, her heels clicking against the linoleum floor. "I had to hear from my father that some sort of investigation is underway." "Please, Caroline," Mr. Morgan Sr. said wearily. "This isn't about assigning blame. It's about helping Lily." Mrs. Morgan's professional composure wavered slightly at her father's tone. She took a seat, smoothing her skirt with practiced precision. "As I was explaining," Mrs. Winters continued, "our home visit raised several concerns. Lily's living environment is physically immaculate but emotionally lacking. Her room resembles a display in a furniture store, perfect, untouched, without the normal signs of a child actually living and playing there. We maintain high standards," Mrs. Morgan countered defensively. "That doesn't constitute neglect." "No, one is using that word," Ms. Chen interjected gently. "But children need more than physical care. They need engagement, attention, emotional connection." "And what does any of this have to do with Nathan Edwards?" Mr. Morgan Sr. asked, bringing the conversation back to his primary concern. Mrs. Winters consulted her notes. "We've been unable to find much information about him. He worked for your estate from when Lily was approximately 2 until she was 4 years old, correct? Then was let go for reasons that aren't clearly documented." Mr. Morgan Sr. nodded grimly. "He became inappropriately attached to Lily. Nothing overtly concerning at first. He would create little flower arrangements for her, tell her stories about the garden. But over time, his behavior became more worrisome. He'd seek her out whenever she visited, speak to her about special secrets only they shared." "What kind of secrets?" Dr. Patel asked. "Childish fantasies, mostly, that flowers could listen and remember, that certain plants had magical properties." The old man's hands tightened on his cane. "We thought it harmless initially, just a kindly gardener with an imagination. But then he began telling Lily she was special, that she had something inside her that made her different from other children. Sarah felt a chill at these words, remembering Lily's constant references to Whisper living inside her. When we let him go, he became distraught, Mr. Morgan Sr. continued. Begged us to let him at least maintain the special garden he'd created for Lily. When we refused, he left a note saying the flowers would remember, and he would return when it was time. The room fell silent as everyone processed this information. Has Lily been back to this property since then? Mrs. Winters asked. No, Mrs. Morgan said firmly. After my mother passed away, Father moved to his current residence. The old estate has been sitting vacant while we decide whether to sell. Through the conference room's window, Sarah could see into Lily's room across the hall. The little girl was sitting up in bed, drawing intently. From this angle, Sarah could just make out the shape forming on the page. The now familiar garden with its round-windowed house. I'd like to see this property, Ms. Chen said decisively. I'll take you, Mr. Morgan Sr. offered, though I haven't been back in years myself. The meeting continued, with decisions being made about Lily's care and the ongoing investigation into Nathan's concerning behavior. Mrs. Morgan alternated between defensive posturing and moments of genuine worry for her daughter. Mr. Morgan Sr. provided what information he could about Nathan's employment history. When they finally returned to Lily's room, Sarah noticed the little girl watching them all with unusual intensity, as if she had somehow overheard their entire conversation despite being across the hall. Lilybell, her grandfather said gently, we've been talking about the special garden, the one Mr. N made for you. Lily looked up from her drawing, her expression unreadable. Are you going there? Some of us might, yes, to see it. Lily's eyes widened with alarm. You can't go without me. The flowers only talk when I'm there. That's what Mr. N always said. Mrs. Morgan moved to her daughter's bedside, attempting an affectionate gesture that came across as awkward. Sweetie, no one's going right away, and you need to stay here until the doctors say you're better. But Mr. N is waiting, Lily insisted, her voice rising with urgency. He told me he's getting everything ready for when I come back. Sarah caught Ms. Chen's concerned glance and knew they were thinking the same thing. When had Nathan told Lily this? During his brief hospital visit, or had there been other communications they weren't aware of? As if reading their thoughts, Lily reached under her pillow and pulled out a small envelope. Inside was a pressed flower, a vibrant red bloom that Sarah didn't recognize, and a note in careful handwriting. The listening flowers are ready, Lily Flower. They've missed you. Soon we'll visit them together. When did you get this? Mrs. Morgan demanded, taking the note with trembling fingers. Lily shrugged, pulling her knees up to her chest protectively. Whisper found it. He says Mr. N is very good at leaving messages where only I can see them. Morning sunlight filtered through the blinds of Lily's hospital room, casting striped shadows across the floor. 3 days had passed since the discovery of Nathan's note, and security at the hospital had been quietly enhanced. A police detective had taken statements, and hospital staff had been alerted to prevent Nathan from visiting again. Sarah arrived to find Lily sitting with Dr. Bennett, the child psychologist who had been working with her. The woman's kind face and colorful scarf seemed at odds with the serious conversation they were having. Good morning, Sarah greeted them, setting down her tote bag filled with books and art supplies. Miss Anderson, Lily's face brightened. Dr. Bennett was asking about Whisper. And how is Whisper today? Sarah asked, taking a seat on the other side of Lily's bed. He's quieter now, Lily replied, her hand unconsciously moving to her stomach. The medicine makes him sleepy sometimes. Dr. Bennett made a note on her tablet. Lily was just telling me that Whisper first appeared when she was 4 years old. Around the same time, Mr. N stopped working at her grandfather's house. Sarah caught the significance of this timeline immediately. Dr. Bennett gave her a subtle nod, confirming they were thinking along the same lines. Lily, The psychologist continued gently. Can you tell Miss Anderson what you were explaining to me about how Whisper protects you? The little girl pulled her knees up, wrapping her arms around them. When I'm scared or lonely, Whisper hugs me from the inside. Sometimes it hurts a little, but he says that's just because he's holding on tight. And when does Whisper need to protect you most? Dr. Bennett prompted. When no one else is there, Lily said simply. Or when Mr. N talks about the garden. A knock at the door interrupted them. Mrs. Winters entered with Ms. Chen and a police officer, a woman in plain clothes who introduced herself as Detective Rivera. We're planning to visit the old Morgan property today, Mrs. Winters explained. Detective Rivera will accompany us. Dr. Bennett excused herself to speak with them in the hallway, leaving Sarah alone with Lily, who had begun drawing again, this time creating a map-like illustration of the garden, complete with paths and specific flowers labeled in her careful handwriting. Is this to help them find the garden? Sarah asked. Lily nodded solemnly. They need to be careful. The flowers see everything. Later that morning, Mr. Morgan Sr. arrived with a set of keys and detailed directions to the old estate. Sarah, who had been included in the expedition due to Lily's trust in her, listened carefully as the elderly man described the property. It's about 50 acres total, mostly wooded. The main house sits at the end of a long drive. The children's garden Nathan created is behind the east wing, near what used to be the kitchen garden. He handed Mrs. Winters a faded photograph showing a younger Lily, perhaps 3 years old, standing proudly beside a small playhouse, with distinctive round windows. Behind her stretched a garden with an explosion of colorful flowers. May I? Sarah asked, studying the photograph. The garden was indeed remarkable, artfully designed with winding paths, arches covered in climbing roses, and flower beds arranged in concentric circles. In the background stood Nathan, his expression difficult to read as he watched Lily from a distance. That was taken during better times, Mr. Morgan Sr. said with a sigh. Before Nathan's behavior became concerning. What exactly happened? Detective Rivera asked directly. The old man's face clouded. It was gradual. He became possessive of both the garden and Lily's time there, insisted only he could properly maintain it, began telling Lily stories about the garden having special powers. He paused, seeming to search for the right words. One day, my late wife overheard him, telling Lily that she had a special friend living inside her who could only come out in the garden, that this friend needed to be protected from adults who wouldn't understand. Sarah felt a chill run through her. Whisper. When confronted, Nathan became defensive, claiming he was just encouraging. Lily's imagination, Mr. Morgan Sr. continued, but after consulting with a child psychologist, we decided to terminate his employment. He didn't take it well. And Lily's parents? Detective Rivera pressed. Where were they during all this? My son was already traveling extensively for work. Caroline was building her career. They relied heavily on staff and family to help with Lily. His voice held a note of old regret. Before they departed for the property, Sarah returned to Lily's room to say goodbye. She found the little girl unusually agitated, rearranging her drawing supplies. With nervous energy. You're going to the garden today, Lily stated rather than asked. Yes, with your grandfather and some others. We want to understand more about this special place. Lily grabbed Sarah's hand with surprising strength. Be careful of the red flowers. They're the ones that remember the most. Remember what, Lily? The little girl's eyes were wide and serious. All the things Mr. N told me to whisper to them. All the secrets about the friend inside me. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. Mr. N said Whisper needed a safe place to grow. He said, sometimes Whisper might want to come out completely. As Sarah prepared to leave with the investigation team, she couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that they were missing something crucial, some piece of the puzzle that would explain Nathan's obsession with Lily and the mysterious friend he had helped her imagine lived inside her. The Morgan estate appeared through the trees like a vision from another era, A grand colonial home with white columns and wide verandas, now showing signs of neglect. Ivy crept unchecked up the eastern wall, and the once manicured lawns had grown wild, nature slowly reclaiming what had been tamed. Sarah stood with Mrs. Winters, Ms. Chen, Detective Rivera, and Mr. Morgan Sr. at the end of the long gravel driveway, taking in the melancholy beauty of the abandoned property. "It's been 4 years," Mr. Morgan Sr. said quietly, leaning heavily on his cane. "Harder to see it this way than I expected." They approached the house cautiously, Detective Rivera leading the way. Inside, furniture sat draped in white sheets, family photographs still hung on walls, and a fine layer of dust covered everything. It felt frozen in time, as if the family had simply stepped out momentarily rather than abandoned it years ago. "The children's garden is this way," Mr. Morgan Sr. directed, leading them through the house to a back door that opened onto a stone terrace. What they saw beyond took Sarah's breath away. Despite years of neglect, the garden lily had drawn so meticulously was unmistakable, and far from abandoned. While the rest of the property had surrendered to wilderness, this section had been maintained with loving care. Pathways were clear of weeds, flowers bloomed in organized beds, and in the center stood the playhouse with its distinctive round windows. "This isn't possible," Mr. Morgan Sr. said, his voice shaking. "No one has been caring for this property." "Someone has," Detective Rivera observed, kneeling to examine the freshly turned soil around a vibrant bed of red flowers, the same vivid shade as the pressed bloom. Nathan had given Lily. "These are not common plants," Mrs. Winters noted, looking around with increasing concern. "This has taken consistent, expert attention." They approached the playhouse cautiously. It was larger than it had appeared in the photograph, big enough for an adult to stand inside, though built to child scale. The round windows were of stained glass, casting colorful patterns on the floor inside. Detective Rivera pushed the tiny door open with gloved hands. The interior was immaculate and recently occupied. A child-sized table held drawing supplies, a small bookshelf contained worn volumes of fairy tales, and hanging from the ceiling were dozens of pressed flowers, suspended on invisible threads so they seemed to float in the air. On the table lay an open journal filled with handwriting Sarah recognized immediately as Nathan's, from the note he'd given Lily. She leaned closer to read. Day 1, 274. The garden thrives despite all obstacles. The listening flowers grow stronger each season. Soon Lily Flower will return, and Whisper can finally emerge completely. The preparations are nearly complete. This is dated 3 days ago, Detective Rivera said grimly, carefully photographing each page of the journal. As they continued to explore, Sarah felt increasingly uneasy. The garden was beautiful, yes, but there was something unnatural about its perfection amidst the surrounding decay. It reminded her of Lily's home, immaculate on the surface but hiding something troubling beneath. When they returned to the hospital that afternoon, they found Lily engaged in art therapy with Dr. Bennett. For the first time, she wasn't drawing the garden or Mr. N, but rather herself, a small figure surrounded by a protective blue light. "That's Whisper," she explained when Sarah inquired. "He's always with me." Dr. Bennett invited Sarah to join them. "We've been talking about different ways we can feel safe," she explained. "Lily has been sharing how Whisper helps her when she feels alone or scared." "He hugs me from the inside," Lily said, adding blue swirls around her self-portrait. "But sometimes it hurts when he hugs too tight." "When does that happen?" Sarah asked gently. "When I'm really scared. Or when I think about Mr. N in the garden." Lily's crayon slowed. "Dr. Bennett says maybe Whisper is part of me, a part that wants to keep me safe." Sarah exchanged a glance with the psychologist, who nodded encouragingly. "That's an interesting idea," Sarah said. "What do you think about that?" Lily considered this seriously, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Maybe. But then why does my tummy hurt when he's there?" "Sometimes," Dr. Bennett explained, "our bodies react to big feelings. When we're very worried or scared or lonely, those feelings can make our stomachs hurt or our hearts race. Like how caterpillars feel when they're changing into butterflies, Lily asked suddenly. Mr. N told me that's what was happening inside me. That whisper was like a butterfly waiting to come out. The image sent a chill through Sarah. She remembered the journal entry they'd found. Soon, whisper can finally emerge completely. That evening, as Sarah was preparing to leave, Lily reached for her hand. The little girl's fingers were warm, against her own, and her eyes held a new clarity. I drew something for you, she said, handing over a folded piece of paper. Sarah opened it to find not the garden or Mr. N, but a drawing of herself and Lily holding hands, surrounded by a circle of light. Dr. Bennett says I can find real friends who make me feel safe, Lily explained softly. Not just ones inside me. For the first time since this ordeal began, Sarah felt a flicker of hope. Somewhere beneath the layers of fantasy and fear, Lily was finding her way toward healing. A week had passed since the visit to the Morgan estate. Autumn had fully arrived, painting the trees outside Lily's hospital window in fiery oranges and deep reds. The little girl's physical condition had improved steadily. The mysterious pain and inflammation were subsiding as she continued to work with Dr. Bennett daily. Sarah arrived at the hospital that morning to find an unusual gathering in Lily's room. Dr. Patel, Dr. Bennett, Detective Rivera, Mrs. Winters, and both of Lily's parents were engaged in serious conversation, while Lily sat cross-legged on her bed, focused intently on a puzzle Sarah had brought her the previous day. Miss Anderson. Lily's face brightened when she spotted her teacher in the doorway. Mrs. Morgan turned, her expression a complex mixture of emotions. Gone was the immaculate businesswoman Sarah had first met. Today she wore jeans and a simple sweater, her hair pulled back in a casual ponytail, and most surprisingly, there was no phone in sight. We were just discussing Lily's discharge, she explained. The doctors believe she's well enough to go home soon. That's wonderful news, Sarah said, though she noticed the tension in the room suggested complications. Mr. Morgan, who had finally returned from his business trip 3 days prior, stood by the window. He was a tall man with Lily's honey-colored hair and thoughtful eyes, though lines of worry had etched themselves deeply around them. We're still working through some details, he said, his voice carrying the weariness of difficult decisions. Given everything that's happened with Nathan Edwards, there are precautions to consider. Detective Rivera nodded. We've been monitoring the estate, but there's been no sign of Edwards. The journal we found indicates he's been maintaining that garden for years without anyone's knowledge. He clearly has an unhealthy fixation on Lily and this whisper entity he helped her imagine. It wasn't imagination, Lily interrupted with unexpected clarity, looking up from her puzzle. Whisper is real. He's just not what Mr. N thinks he is. All eyes turned to the little girl who seemed suddenly older than her 6 years. What do you mean, sweetheart? Dr. Bennett asked gently. Lily set aside her puzzle piece. Dr. Bennett helped me understand. Whisper is the part of me that was lonely, the part that needed someone to talk to when no one was listening. Her small hand rested on her stomach. He's not something that needs to come out, he's just me. Sarah felt a rush of pride at Lily's insight, coupled with a pang of sadness that a child so young had needed to create an internal friend to cope with her loneliness. Mrs. Morgan moved to sit beside her daughter, tentatively taking her hand. Lily, I know your father and I haven't been as present as we should have been. That's going to change. We both took some significant steps back from work, Mr. Morgan added, joining them. I've declined the Seattle position that required so much travel, and your mother has arranged to work from home with reduced hours. Lily looked between her parents with cautious hope, as if afraid to believe this new reality might last. Dr. Bennett smiled encouragingly. Lily has been doing wonderful work understanding her feelings and finding healthier ways to express them. But there's still the matter of Nathan Edwards. We have officers monitoring both the old estate and your current residence, Detective Rivera explained. but we haven't been able to locate Edwards. Given his persistent interest in Lily and his concerning behaviors, we believe he may attempt to contact her again. Which brings us to our current discussion, Mrs. Winters interjected. We're considering the safest environment for Lily's recovery. Sarah listened as they outlined the options, returning home with increased security measures, temporarily relocating to a different residence, or even a brief stay in a specialized children's residential facility, where Lily could continue intensive therapy while remaining protected. Throughout the conversation, Sarah noticed how Lily's attention had drifted back to the window, where the piece Lily Nathan had brought still sat on. The sill. The plant had flourished in the hospital environment, its white flowers standing tall and vibrant. A nurse appeared at the door with Lily's lunch tray, interrupting the discussion. As the adults moved into the hallway to continue their conversation, Sarah stayed behind with Lily. "How are you feeling about all of this?" she asked, helping Lily arrange her lunch. "I miss my room," Lily admitted, "but I don't want to see Mr. N again. He tells stories that sound nice, but make Whisper scared." Sarah nodded, carefully choosing her words. "Your parents seem ready to make some big changes." "They've been here every day now," Lily confirmed, a note of wonder in her voice. "Daddy reads me stories at night and Mommy doesn't bring her computer anymore." As they talked, Sarah noticed a folded paper protruding from beneath Lily's pillow. Seeing her glance, Lily stiffened. "What's that?" "Lily?" Sarah asked gently. The little girl hesitated, then slowly withdrew the paper. It was folded into an origami flower, similar to the note Nathan had left before. "When did you get this?" Sarah asked, careful to keep her voice calm despite her racing heart. "It was with my breakfast this morning," Lily whispered. The nurse didn't see it. Sarah carefully unfolded the paper. Inside was a message written in the now familiar handwriting. "Dearest Lily Flower, the garden is ready for your return. The listening flowers have kept all our secrets safe. Soon, very soon, we'll be together again, and Whisper can finally bloom. Look for the red flowers, they'll show you the way home. Your friend always, N." Sarah immediately called Detective Rivera back into the room. The detective's expression darkened as she read the note. "This was delivered with her breakfast tray," she confirmed, already moving toward the door to alert hospital security. Within minutes, the hospital was on high alert. Security footage was being reviewed, staff questioned, and a thorough search of the building initiated. Mr. and Mrs. Morgan hovered protectively near Lily, while Dr. Bennett quietly engaged her in conversation about how the note made her feel. "He's been here," Lily said, her voice small but certain. "I can feel it. Whisper always knows when Mr. N is close." As the day progressed, a plan began to take shape. Detective Rivera conferred with her colleagues, then returned with a proposal. "Edwards clearly has some way of accessing the hospital, or at least getting messages inside," she explained. "Rather than waiting for him to make another move, we propose creating a controlled situation, one where we can ensure Lily's safety while finally apprehending him. You want to use my daughter as bait?" Mr. Morgan asked incredulously. "Not exactly," Detective Rivera clarified. "We want to create the appearance that Lily is being moved home, while actually transferring her to a secure location. Edwards has been watching, that much is clear. If he believes Lily is returning home, he may finally show himself. And if he doesn't," Mrs. Morgan demanded, "then Lily remains safe at the secure location while we continue our investigation. But my instinct says he's getting impatient. This fantasy he's created about Whisper emerging seems to be reaching some kind of crescendo in his mind." After much discussion and careful planning, a decision was made. Lily would appear to be discharged the following day, with a police officer posing as her driver and others maintaining discreet surveillance. The real Lily would be taken to a safe house where she could continue her recovery away from Nathan's watchful eyes. That night, as Sarah helped Lily pack her few belongings, the little girl suddenly looked up with alarming clarity. "He won't be fooled," she said simply. "The flowers always tell him everything." Morning arrived with a heavy fog that shrouded the hospital. In ghostly white, transforming the familiar landscape into something mysterious and uncertain. It seemed fitting for the day's tense plan, a carefully orchestrated deception designed to draw out Nathan Edwards while keeping Lily safe. Sarah arrived early, finding Lily already dressed in her own clothes rather than hospital pajamas. The little girl sat quietly on her bed, her small suitcase packed and ready beside her. In her hands, she clutched her drawing pad, flipping through pages of gardens, round-windowed houses, and increasingly new drawings of herself surrounded by family and friends rather than shadowy figures. "Good morning, Lily," Sarah greeted her warmly. "Are you ready for today?" Lily nodded solemnly. "I'm pretending to go home, but I'm really going to the special safe house." "That's right. Just for a little while until the police can find Mr. N. "I've been practicing," Lily said, suddenly sitting straighter and putting on a bright smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "See? This is my excited-to-go-home face." The performance sent a chill down Sarah's spine. The ease with which this 6-year-old could mask her true feelings spoke volumes about what she'd learned in her young life. Detective Rivera arrived with Mrs. Winters, going over final preparations. A female officer named Jenkins would pose as a nurse, accompanying Lily and Mrs. Morgan to the hospital exit. Another officer would drive them in a car identical to the Morgans' luxury sedan. Meanwhile, the real transport, an unmarked police vehicle, would take Lily and her mother to a secure location through the hospital's service exit. "Remember," Detective Rivera instructed everyone, "we need to make this look completely routine. Edwards has clearly been watching the hospital. Somehow. If he believes Lily is truly going home, he may finally make a move that allows us to apprehend him." Dr. Bennett had arrived to say goodbye to Lily, bringing a special journal with a lock and key. "This is for your thoughts and feelings," she explained, showing Lily how the small key worked. "Sometimes it helps to write things down when they feel too big to keep inside." "Like how Whisper used to hold my feelings?" Lily asked thoughtfully. The psychologist nodded. "Exactly. But this way is gentler on your body." As the appointed hour approached, hospital staff moved efficiently through their assigned roles. Mr. Morgan had already departed for their home, where he would maintain the appearance of preparing for Lily's return, while police officers remained stationed discreetly around the property. Sarah knelt beside Lily for a final hug before the little girl left with Officer Jenkins and Mrs. Morgan for their staged departure. "I'll see you very soon," Sarah promised. "In just a few days." Lily hugged her tightly, then whispered in her ear, "Be careful of the red flowers. They're his messengers." With that cryptic warning, Lily put on her practiced smile and took Officer Jenkins' hand, walking confidently toward the main elevators as if truly heading home. Sarah remained behind with Detective Rivera and 2 other officers, planning to wait 30 minutes before following the real transport vehicle to the safe house. As they waited, reviewing final security measures, a nurse rushed in with an urgent expression. "There's a problem," she said breathlessly. "The service elevator is stuck between floors. Maintenance is working on it, but it'll be at least an hour before it's operational." Detective Rivera cursed under her breath. "We need an alternative route now." What followed was a flurry of replanning. They would use a different service corridor, timing the movement carefully to avoid regular hospital traffic. Sarah watched the clock anxiously as minutes ticked by, the delay increasing the risk that something might go wrong. Finally, word came that the second transport was ready. Sarah gathered Lily's remaining belongings, a few drawings she'd left behind and the peace lily from her windowsill, which Lily had asked to bring to the safe house. As Sarah picked up the plant, she noticed something strange, a small piece of paper, nestled among the leaves, nearly invisible against the white blooms. With trembling fingers, she extracted it, another origami flower, this one made from red paper. She unfolded it quickly, her heart racing as she read, "The flowers have told me everything. I know about your plan. Don't worry. Lilyflower and I will be together in our special garden, where whisper can finally bloom. By the time you read this, we'll already be on our way home. Sarah ran to Detective Rivera, thrusting the note into her hands. He knows. He must have been watching somehow, through the plant or before. She could finish, Rivera's phone rang. Her expression darkened as she listened to the caller. When? She demanded. How many minutes ago? Lock down the entire hospital, now! She turned to Sarah, her professional composure cracking for the first time. The decoy car arrived at the Morgan home. Safely. But when they reached the alternate service exit with the real transport, she paused, the words seemingly difficult to form. Lily and Officer Torres are missing. Mrs. Morgan was found unconscious. She's being treated now, but she's unable to tell us what happened. Ice flooded Sarah's veins. How is this possible? The hospital is full of people. The service area was deliberately cleared for the transport, Rivera explained grimly. And with the fog this morning. Another officer rushed in, holding a tablet displaying security footage. We found something, camera 3 in the service corridor. The grainy video showed a hospital maintenance worker pushing a laundry cart through a hallway. Nothing seemed unusual until Rivera pointed to the worker's face. That's him, Edwards. He's wearing a disguise, but that's definitely him. Sarah's attention shifted to the laundry cart, covered with a large cloth that could easily have concealed a small child. He took her right from under our noses, she whispered. But how did he know about the change in plans? Detective Rivera was already mobilizing her team, issuing rapid orders into her radio. All units to the Morgan estate immediately. And get a team to the old property, the garden. That's where he's taking her. As chaos erupted around her, Sarah stood frozen, staring at the plant on the windowsill. The piece Nathan had given Lily weeks ago. That had sat in her room every day since, witnessing every conversation, every plan. The flowers are his messengers, she murmured, remembering Lily's warning. They hear everything. She turned to Detective Rivera with sudden urgency. I need to come with you to the garden. Lily trusts me. If she's frightened. The detective hesitated only briefly, before nodding. Stay with me at all times. We leave now. As they raced toward the old Morgan estate, Sarah clutched Lily's drawing pad to her chest, praying they weren't too late. The fog had thickened into a misty rain, reducing visibility on the winding country roads and adding to the sense of urgency and dread. He's been planning this for weeks, Rivera said grimly as they drove. Maybe years. Sarah nodded, remembering the immaculately maintained garden amid the neglect of the rest of the property. The playhouse with its round windows, the journal with its disturbing entries about whisper emerging. What did Nathan truly believe would happen when he brought Lily back to the garden? What twisted fantasy had he constructed around this innocent child and her imaginary friend? The answers lay somewhere ahead in the fog, in a garden of listening flowers and secrets, where a frightened little girl waited to be found. The police convoy approached the Morgan estate with silent lights, tires crunching softly on the gravel driveway. The grand house loomed through the mist like a faded photograph, its white columns ghostly in the diffused light. Detective Rivera directed her. A team with hand signals, positioning officers to surround the property while keeping a clear path to the garden. Sarah remained in the car as instructed, her heart pounding so loudly she was certain everyone could hear it. Through the foggy window, she watched the officers move like shadows across the overgrown lawn, their forms disappearing and reappearing in the mist. Minutes stretched like hours until Rivera returned to the car. We're going to approach the garden now, she said in a low voice. Stay behind me at all times. If I signal you to stop or retreat, you do so immediately. Understood? Sarah nodded, clutching Lily's drawing pad like a talisman as she followed the detective along a stone path that wound around the east wing of the house. The path was wet with mist, moss growing between the stones, yet remarkably clear of the overgrowth that had claimed the rest of the grounds. As they rounded the corner, the children's garden appeared before them, an oasis of meticulous care amid neglect. In the foggy half-light, The flowers seemed to glow with unnatural vibrancy, their colors too bright against the muted background. The red blooms Lily had warned about lined the central path, leading directly to the playhouse with its round stained glass windows. Light glowed from within the small structure, casting colorful patterns through the mist. "There's someone inside," Rivera whispered, gesturing for her team to move into position around the garden. Sarah strained to hear any sound that might indicate Lily was safe, but the garden was eerily silent. No birds, no insects, not even the rustle of leaves in the damp air. Rivera motioned for Sarah to stay back as she and another officer approached the playhouse. Just as they reached the midpoint of the garden path, a small figure emerged from the round door. Lily, still in her going-home clothes, her honey-colored hair slightly damp from the mist. "Lily," Sarah called out instinctively, relief flooding through her. The little girl turned toward her voice, her expression oddly serene. "Miss Anderson," she said calmly, "you came to see the garden." Detective Rivera signaled her team to hold position as she addressed Lily gently. "Are you okay, sweetheart? Where is Mr. Edwards?" "Mr. N is inside," Lily replied, gesturing toward the playhouse. "He's been waiting for me to come back. He says the flowers missed me." "Can you come over here to Miss Anderson?" Rivera asked, keeping her voice steady despite the tension evident in her posture. Lily hesitated, glancing back at the playhouse. "But we just started the ceremony. Whisper is finally going to bloom." Sarah stepped forward, cautiously, ignoring Rivera's warning glance. "Lily, remember what Dr. Bennett talked about? About Whisper being a part of you, not something separate?" The little girl's brow furrowed slightly. "But Mr. N says—" "Nathan," Rivera called out firmly. "This is Detective Rivera with the police department. Come out of the playhouse with your hands visible." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the round door opened wider, and Nathan Edwards emerged, stooping to fit through the child-sized entrance. He looked different from when Sarah had seen him at the hospital. His hair was longer, his clothes dirt-stained from gardening, but his eyes held the same intense focus. "You're interrupting a very important moment," he said, his voice surprisingly calm. "Lily and I were just about to complete what we started years ago." The garden seemed suspended in time as Nathan stood beside Lily, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. Police officers maintained their positions, weapons lowered but ready, while Detective Rivera continued to speak in a calm, measured tone. "Nathan, we need you to step away from Lily now," she said. "We can talk about everything, but first, Lily needs to, come with us." "You don't understand," Nathan replied, his expression earnest rather than threatening. "Today is special. The flowers have been waiting years for this moment." He looked down at Lily with genuine affection. "Tell them, Lily Flower. Tell them about Whisper." Sarah held her breath. Watching Lily's face carefully, the little girl stood very still, her eyes moving between Nathan, the officers, and Sarah. "Whisper," Lily began softly, then paused, seeming to gather her thoughts. "Whisper was my friend when I was lonely." "That's right," Nathan nodded encouragingly. "The special friend inside you that only the flowers and I could hear." Lily's brow furrowed slightly. "But Dr. Bennett helped me understand. Whisper isn't something separate from me. He's just my feelings. The part of me that needed someone to listen." A flicker of confusion crossed Nathan's face. "No. Lily Flower, you don't understand. Whisper is special. He's waiting to bloom, to come out into the world through the garden's magic. That's why I've kept it ready all these years." Sarah took a careful step forward, catching Lily's eye. "Lily, remember what we talked about? About real friends who make you feel safe." Something shifted in Lily's expression, a new awareness, a quiet strength. She looked up at Nathan, her small face suddenly resolute. "Mr. N," she said gently, "Whisper doesn't need to come out. He's already part of me." She placed her hand over her stomach, but differently than before, not protectively but with understanding. "The garden is beautiful, but it's just a garden." Nathan's face crumpled with disappointment. "But we had a plan. All these years tending the flowers, keeping our secrets. I know, Lily said softly, but I don't need secrets anymore. I have real people who listen now. She stepped away from Nathan, moving deliberately toward Sarah. Nathan made no move to stop her, his expression shifting from confusion to a profound sadness. As Lily reached Sarah, Detective Rivera signaled her officers. They moved forward, gently taking Nathan into custody. He offered no resistance, his attention still fixed on the garden as if waiting for the flowers to speak, to validate his years of devotion. "The flowers will remember," he murmured as he was led away. "They always remember." Sarah knelt to embrace Lily, feeling the little girl's arms wrapped tightly around her neck. "You were so brave," she whispered. Lily pulled back slightly, her eyes clear and direct. "Whisper isn't scared anymore," she said simply. In the days that followed, life began to reshape itself around a new normal. Nathan was receiving psychological treatment, his delusions about the garden and Whisper stemming from his own childhood traumas and loneliness. The Morgan family was undergoing its own transformation. Mr. Morgan had indeed declined his traveling position, and Mrs. Morgan had restructured her work to be present for her daughter. Lily continued her sessions with Dr. Bennett, using her journal to express feelings that once had no outlet except through Whisper and her mysterious stomach pains. The physical symptoms had vanished completely, confirming what the doctors had suspected. Her body had been manifesting the emotional distress she couldn't otherwise express. 2 months after the garden incident, Sarah visited the Morgan home, not the pristine showcase it had once been, but a place where toys were actually played with, where drawings covered the refrigerator, and where voices and laughter filled the once silent rooms. She found Lily in the backyard, jumping rope with her father counting the skips. Mrs. Morgan sat nearby, her laptop closed for once, simply watching her family with a smile. When Lily spotted Sarah, she ran over with excitement. "Miss Anderson, watch how many I can do now." Sarah watched as Lily returned to her rope, jumping with newfound confidence and energy. After reaching 27 skips, a personal record, Lily stopped, slightly breathless but beaming. "That's wonderful, Lily," Sarah praised. "You've been practicing." Lily nodded proudly. "I don't have tummy aches anymore when I jump." "And how about Whisper?" Sarah asked gently. "Do you still talk to him?" Lily considered this for a moment, her head tilted thoughtfully. "Sometimes," she admitted, "but it's different now. He's like a part of my heart instead of my tummy." She smiled, a genuine expression of childlike wisdom. "And you know what? I don't need a magic garden anymore. My real life is starting to feel pretty magical too."